Welcome to episode 4 of Roseanne, the show where two guys get together, talk a little bit about the show Roseanne.
Mm-hmm.
And my name is Zach Zichter, and I'm joined by...
This is Jay Warren.
And let's see, what should we do to start off today? We've got an episode called... this is Season 1, Episode 4 of Roseanne. It's called Language Lessons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, do you want to say anything before we get the episode rolled off or rolling?
I think we can just start with the episode rolling here.
Okay. So, language lessons. I watched this episode, and I don't really know if I understand that theme, that title.
Well, it probably has a little bit to do with like how people are communicating with each other. Dan and Jackie get in a fight in this episode,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a moment when Jackie says something along the lines of, "Well, if you would have had a job, you wouldn't notice that I'm here so much."
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of one of those things like, have you ever said something that you immediately wish that you didn't say? Like or somebody has maybe even said to you that they crossed a line, or maybe you've crossed a line,
Yeah.
and you don't really know it until it actually comes out of your mouth.
Yeah, no, there's definitely... I think every relationship you have, whether it be, even you and I,
Mm-hmm.
you and me, you and I, you and me, whatever. I'll cover the bases here.
Mm-hmm.
Any relationship I think you have, you figure out those boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and you figure out, well, where do you cross them?
Mm-hmm.
How real can you get with someone?
Yeah.
And the more real, the more close you get to someone, the more real you can be. But at the same time, you know their triggers, their buttons. You know how to button push.
Yep. You kind of were picking up on their dialect a little bit in this episode.
Oh yeah. I think there was, I don't know what it was about or what the setup was, but Roseanne said they're going to
Mm-hmm.
instead of going to.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting. Another thing that you mentioned while we were watching was that South Dakota, well, the Dakotas in general, North Dakota first, and then South Dakota got a little shout out.
Yep.
Not necessarily in a good way,
No.
because Dan was like, "Why don't you go move to North Dakota?"
Yeah. And then South Dakota,
Yeah.
which at least he recognizes that South Dakota is the better Dakota.
Speaking of the Dakotas in general, and how let's go live in Timbuktu or go live in South Dakota. How that's just a place that it's, I don't know, it's disparaging. They're disparaging the Dakotas. I remember when I was a kid, I had a T-shirt that I think I got from my cousin Steve, and it said, "South Dakota isn't the end of the world, but you can see it from here."
What does that mean?
Oh, well, I suppose if it was a flat Earth and there was an actual end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever read the magazine Stuff?
I don't think so.
It's like a man's magazine, and they used to have there's an issue where they ran fake tourism ads for North and South Dakota,
Okay.
and I can't remember. South Dakota's was like now 10% less desolate, and our Indians are friendlier, and their website was NorthDakotaSucksGoatBalls.com or something like that.
That's funny.
Yep.
When was that? How long ago was that?
No, that's easily 15 years ago,
Okay.
because they don't even make that magazine anymore.
Now that you mentioned it, I think I do remember Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a Maxim.
Yep, it was made
type.
by the same publishers as Maxim.
Okay. Yeah.
And they even had that publication even had like a music magazine out for a while called Blender
I remember that.
that I used to read a lot. I used to read all those a lot when I was younger.
I feel like maybe there was a Blender magazine volume with Limp Bizkit on it.
Oh, probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be about the same time.
Sure.
And then like it's funny because that same magazine had an article about how Limp Bizkit killed rock radio, because there was a time when kind of that new metal, as it was called at the time, was really popular.
Korn,
Yeah.
Limp Bizkit, what were a few more?
Dis-
Rage Against the Machine.
Disturbed, things
Disturbed,
like that.
yeah, okay.
And Linkin Park.
Yep.
Anyway, when that happened, a bunch of these like classic rock stations switched their format to new metal, and maybe a year and a half later, that music had already fallen out of style. So all these rock stations were closing because nobody wants to listen to fucking Linkin Park anymore.
No. I mean, it was a fad.
Oh yeah,
There was a.
it came on strong though. Like that's so I bet at the time changing your format seemed like a good idea, but like,
Well, there was always hardcore and there's always metal. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like punk. You know, someone like Green Day isn't they're not the pioneers of punk. I mean, there was the Ramones and there was
The Clash.
the Clash, and so there's always been underground punk and there's always been underground hardcore. I don't know that anybody. I mean, Rage Against the Machine started in '92. I
Oh, yeah.
think. I mean, that's the epitome of rap rock. Or I don't know that would be called new metal. I don't think Korn was maybe the first band that they called new metal.
yeah.
But even so, it's in a very similar genre. And I think there was those bands happening. I think Korn was also early '90s, maybe '94,
Yeah, I would say mid 90s is when they started, yeah.
but it didn't really catch on until maybe their third album. And I don't remember the name of that one. Follow the Leader, maybe.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Limp Bizkit, they had their first. What was it, $3 bill, y'all?
Yeah.
That was the one that was a little more raw and edgy, and it had I don't know, it had a version of George.
Yeah. George Michaels?
Is that the guy that does Faith?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, their second album was a little more polished, and that was with the Nuki.
Yep. I
That's
remember.
That's what they did it all for.
Yeah. I remember a lot of my friends having that album.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really like Limp Bizkit until they had that song for Mission Impossible 2.
Okay.
Yeah. That was like that album. That was the one I had, was the Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water, which I didn't get that double entendre until like much later.
Gross.
I was in college when I finally got that. I'm like, oh,
I don't know if
Chocolate Starfish, yep.
I'm not sure that I understand it right now, and I don't think I want to because. Right. Anyway, let's move on. Anyway,
You can about imagine.
Yeah. By that album, I think I had given up because that was the one where it was like it's all about the he said, she said. I'm like, that's really stupid lyrics. By the time it was Chocolate Starfish came out, I'm like, they've gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
But for me, anyway.
I'm trying to think of Rollin' was also on that album.
Rolling.
And they had at the end of the album there was another version of that song with like DMX.
What you want?
Which is the one I like because I was really into DMX at the time.
Yeah.
Because I was in high school, so.
Sure. By that time, I suppose Roseanne was already off the air.
Oh yeah.
When was the last season of Roseanne?
I want to say 97.
Okay. Because you said there were 7 seasons.
There's nine.
Nine
Yeah.
seasons. Sorry. So it looks like popsicle sticks here. We're in the middle of this episode, Darlene is trying to do extra credit because she's failing history.
Mm-hmm.
And
She's building a castle.
And it looks as though they're using a Quaker Oats. I guess it's a box. It's like a circular cylindrical box, as like part of the castle, because I can see the QU and then on the bottom OA. I think it's a Quaker Oats tube, and they're using popsicle sticks for I guess the fortress.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make anything with popsicle sticks as a kid?
Oh, I'm sure I did. I just can't remember it right off the top. I remember we made these Christmas ornaments when I was in. I don't know if I was even in. Maybe I was younger. I was even in daycare, but they were like. Ironically enough, I went to a Christian school, and we made these Christmas decorations, and they were like, I'm sure I can find it when I go home for Christmas, but they were like the Star of David. It looked like the Star of David. It was that 6-pointed star, which I didn't really think about until just now. Why wouldn't you find something a little bit more traditionally, Catholic instead of the Star of David for a Christmas decoration?
Well, but the Star of David. I mean, isn't that supposed to be represent the star of the Christmas
Is
star?
It's the Star of David. I guess I don't know.
I mean, it's not as if the Star of David isn't from the Bible.
I mean, yeah, but it tends to be more Jewish, doesn't it?
I think the reason that is because of the Holocaust and its association with the Star of David being on the bands of Jews. Way to bring up the Holocaust, Jay.
I want to point out that I didn't bring up the Holocaust.
Well, I just...
You found a way to bring up the Holocaust like you always do.
I rarely... It's a sparse. It's Whew. Moving on. So the situation, they have little Arch. So right now Jackie is on the phone talking to someone, and Dan really wants to have the phone hung up, so because he's waiting for a call for Dwight, possibly getting a job. But I like how they have that little circular area. They
Mhm.
have this archway that she's standing in, blocking his way, and then he has to kind of go around through
Yep.
like the living room area. And we had we didn't quite have that, but we could go through the kitchen, through a study, through a living room, and we could run around in circles. It was really
Mhm.
fun as a kid, playing tag that way. Did you have anything like that?
Yeah, we did actually. I have this very vivid memory of we had a dog growing up, and his name was Snoopy. Snoopy was a beagle, much like the cartoon dog. And it's like a particularly wet day. I can't remember if it was snowing or what was going on, but like my dad's getting me ready for school. It's just me and him, and he's trying to get me out the door. And we let Snoopy in from outside. And usually Snoopy had to wait in a mud room. He had like a room that he waited in
Sure.
when we weren't home. And he got into the house that day. And so, like, he came in, so there'd be the living room, and then there'd be the kitchen, and then there'd be, like, the fancy dining room where you ate, like, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then there'd be a living room, and then it would connect back to the TV room, so it was like a circle that you could run around in. And he ran around. He was just like a dog, just excited to be alive, pretty much, and just,
Right.
like, ran in that circle a bunch of times and, like, was hauling ass because he's had deep paw prints in the carpet.
Oh, sure. But they were pretty muddy too.
Yeah, they were muddy, and like my dad's trying to get me out the door so he can go to work and I can go to school. Oh man, he was. I've seen that dog pretty like ashamed, like a dog just like ashamed.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Snoopy had no poker face, so like when he felt guilty, you could just see it on him. He just like. There was one day we came home from. Once again, it was just me and my dad, and we came home from dinner or something like that. And Snoopy wasn't allowed to sleep on the furniture because beagles shed a lot. And but he would wait till we would walk in the door, so you could hear him jump off the couch.
Really?
Yeah, and
Oh, so he was sneaking out. Off
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so like there was this one day I'll never forget this. We were coming out and like he sees them and he's like trying to like pretend that he's happy to see us, so his tail's just wiggling, but at the same time he's just like cowering. And my dad, oh man, I have never seen this dog. Like my dad starts taking off his belt, and my dad's like, "Were you sleeping on the couch? Were you sleeping on the couch, you little son of a?" And like he slaps the belt like right next to him, and the dog is still trying to pretend like everything's cool. Still, like, I thought that dog was gonna like melt through the floor. He was just.
Aw. Yeah, I
He didn't actually hit him, but he scared the. Yeah.
Yeah. I got a couple dogs now, and one of them is very, very timid,
Mhm.
and the other one is very, very. I don't want to say bold, but whenever we let them out to to use the facilities, outside a facility. Anyway, to go outside, oftentimes just there's other dogs barking, and it's just bark, 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 bark. It's no matter how much you say don't bark, or stop barking, they're gonna bark.
Yeah.
But
Like my parents, the dog they have now, she's a Shih Tzu, and she thinks she's. They say that like a lot of dogs, like especially smaller dogs, aren't aware of their size,
yeah,
and so like this dog will think that it's tough, and like barking at wildlife outside and at deer, she'll like bark at deer like she's gonna tear them apart, and you'll tell her to stop barking, and you'll have to do it over and over again, and then even after she knows that you're tired of her warning, she'll still like try to like really quietly bark like.
sometimes I bark at my dog.
Yeah,
Just get Nixie riled up.
let's hear your dog bark.
No, I don't think we're gonna do that.
No.
No,
Oh,
that was
oh, oh.
that was Jay for the record.
Zeke, stop. Oh.
Yeah. So back to Roseanne here. This is the scene. This right now we're watching the scene where Jackie and Dan are kind of going at it. And you're like, why are you over here all the time? Well, maybe you wouldn't notice if you had a job.
Yeah. Which you can also just tell, like, she knows that, like, right after she said it, she's just like,
It's true, although then there was a moment afterwards where she's like, he should apologize to me, which they never really resolved that at
No.
the end of the episode, and I kind of like it again. Going back to that first episode of the podcast where I talked about how it feels pretty real. So I appreciate the fact that okay, it's kind of more of a ceasefire than it is an actual agreement.
No. What did they... So you were surprised that they had something, or they mentioned something in this episode.
What was I surprised about?
Had to do with the phone.
Oh, call waiting. Yeah. While he was waiting for a call from Dwight to see maybe possibly he's going to get another drywall job, Jackie's on the phone talking, and she suggested, maybe if you have call waiting, it wouldn't be an issue for me to be on the phone. And I was thinking 1987, that must be pretty new then. So I'm not going to stake a claim that it was super new because we've been wrong in the past and had to make corrections.
Well, let's see here. I'll look it up on the phone here.
Okay.
Call.
I don't think I had. I don't know if growing up I ever had call waiting.
We had it. We got it at when we were still living in Pier, I believe. I know we had a teen line at one point.
Yeah, we always had just one line. I don't know that it got used a ton. We had an answering machine. I mean, most of the time, people that needed to contact us back in those days, they would just drive over.
Oh, really?
I grew up in a small town, outside of a small town, 3 miles north of Coleman, which was 486 people. And if our neighbors needed to get a hold of us, sometimes they just drove over. Because yes, you could call, but chances are, if you're living on a farm, you're not inside to answer the phone anyway. You're out in the field. You're up at the shed. You're fixing a piece of machinery, or you're doing chores, feeding animals. So, I think that was you just had to go over and drive over, because you could call 100 times and you wouldn't get an answer, but that doesn't mean that they weren't there.
Well, according to Wikipedia, call waiting was introduced in North America in the early 1970s.
What?
When the first generation electronic switch machines built by Western Electric.
Okay.
Electronic signaling system 1 started to replace older mechanical equipment in the old Bell system. Local telephone companies. At first, some smaller municipalities had it, only a specific phone exchange. And you have to dial a number to get to call waiting. So you'd have to call a number. If it was busy, you'd have to dial it like 3 more digits to get the next line.
Interesting.
I
thought maybe Al Gore invented it before he invented the internet.
Yeah. It was probably one of his side projects about the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of the internet and its early, I guess not advent, but the early internet before it was really a thing. Do you remember people talking about how they would play Oregon Trail, with like typewriters via the phone, via the internet back in the 80s?
No.
Yeah, you could, it would just, someone could type to you and it would go through the phone line and it would type on your, maybe it's not a typewriter. It's pretty like a Commodore
word processor.
Yeah, like a Commodore 64 or one of those old things. And say you died of dysentery. Because that's how, I don't think there's any winning in Oregon Trail. I think you just die of dysentery at some point.
Yeah, and if you can make it longest without dying of dysentery, you lost the least.
Right. It's a numbers game. Number of years that you lived without dying of dysentery. I think this situation right now that's on screen, we were seeing Roseanne and DJ kind of playing together. DJ was mad at Darlene, and I think this whole episode is people being mad at each other.
Oh yeah,
it felt very parallel A/B story, because Darlene was making her little castle for extra credit so she wouldn't fail history, and DJ, I don't know, jumped on it. It was off camera, so we don't know.
Yeah, he fell on it or something like that.
Yeah, and Darlene called him stupid.
You're a middle sibling, but did you ever make your siblings mad like that, accidentally breaking something of theirs?
I don't recall specifically breaking something of my older siblings, but I do know that I got into a lot of physical fights with Julie and Betsy, the two sisters that were older than me. We did not like each other when we were growing up. Obviously, now we're fine and love each other and love to hang out with each other. But at the time, they didn't treat me super well. Also, I was probably I don't want to call myself stupid, but I was definitely naive. There was a tractor in a shed at my grandparents' house that had rubber wheels.
Okay.
And just think about tractors and think about the history of tractors. I know you probably don't know a ton about them, but you would know enough to know that the first tractor probably had steel wheels, or was steam powered. So something with a rubber steering wheel and rubber wheels probably wasn't the one And by the one, it wasn't named the one, like the first tractor ever made. But they convinced me of that.
How old were you? 22.
Yeah. This was like 2 or 3 years ago. Right. No.
I'm pretty sure I annoyed my, well, and like there was a time when none of us got along. But then like as you know, like Brett and Kirk, they were a little bit closer in age. They were both in high school around the same time.
Okay.
And I was younger, so like by the time I was in middle school, they were in college, and that's kind of when everybody started getting along. But no, I was younger. And plus I was like the young brother that like wanted to go everywhere with them and tag along, and
Oh, sure.
they didn't want that. You don't want your little brother hanging around all the time.
Yeah, it's not cool.
Did Alex always want to hang out with you at a certain point?
I don't know that Alex did. I think Alex was more of a. Alex was one of those kids who was really into work.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he really wanted to be a farmer, or to be a sheep farmer. Really loved those sheep. And loved making money.
Okay.
And he would just save his money, and he actually bought sheep before he graduated high school.
Oh, really? How much is like a head, like a sheep?
I don't know. They went for like 90 cents a pound. That was maybe at a good time for a full grown lamb.
And how much are lambs usually? Like how much do they usually weigh?
Honestly, I don't know. That would be you just Google it.
No.
Sorry. There's a whole bunch of different types of lambs. There's breeds. There's Suffolk. There's Rambouillet. There's Finn. And I'm sure I'm missing a ton of other different breeds. And why are we talking about sheep breeds?
Well, what does Alex do now then?
He is an engineer.
Okay.
And works at, I think it's DGR in Rock Rapids, Iowa.
Okay.
Doing engineer stuff.
Doesn't want to do the farmer thing, huh?
I think he wouldn't mind it.
Oh, yeah?
But
right now this is...
Yeah, I think he tried maybe doing it for a while, but it's hard. It's difficult. I think one of the things he ran into is, animals, there's a lot of variables. There's lots of chances to, get diseases. There's lots of chances for worms.
Okay.
It's tough raising livestock.
My dad grew up on a farm, and he told me a story about like how there was one summer where like a hailstorm came by and just wiped out all of their chickens, and they were eating canned chicken forever. He told me, I can't remember what specifically. There's a specific dish that his mom made with chicken.
Okay.
But he still couldn't eat it for a long time. And chicken in general, because they're like 90 chickens are dead. I guess you're eating chicken for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember being young, and we would, sometimes butcher chickens. There was just chickens just around the farm. And then if you wanted chicken, well, let's go hunt one down, cut the head off, watch it run around without its head off.
Yeah.
Without its head, excuse me.
Oh, okay.
We've kind of wrapped up episode 4 of Roseanne, Language Lessons, and I don't know what we learned, because at the end, it really turns out that
They sort of come to terms with each other, but like there's never an apology made.
No, and as I said, I think it was more of like a what do you call it? A ceasefire versus an actual cessation of hostilities. We're gonna agree not to be mad at each other right now, but we're still I'm not sorry and you're not sorry, and I don't like the situation.
Yeah.
And that I think that's alludes to real life.
I think that's much like real family.
What are your thoughts on this particular episode?
I mean, like we were talking about, I really agree that's really real. Like I think most families, unless it's something that like you really messed up, like families don't usually apologize to each other. There's just kind of an understanding. But also, I imagine like that's also another thing. Like it must, like I'm a person who really needs my space.
Sure.
So like having a person that would just stop by randomly all the time would drive me nuts.
That drives you nuts when I do that, huh?
You don't stop by though.
I'm gonna start.
After I told you that would drive me nuts. That's
well, right. There are reasons I do things.
Yeah. But I imagine like it's just one of those things, especially if you're married. Like if your wife's sister wants to stop by all the time. You just probably have to put up with it.
Yeah, I was curious about just that relationship and what it's like, because every family's different, and I don't know what I get along with my sister-in-law, but I don't know what it would be like if she was over every day. I certainly wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't communicate like Dan and Jackie did. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, not only is she over all the time, but, you know, she's holding up the phone when you're waiting for an important call, or, like, stealing your soda.
Yeah, you really don't know someone until you have to live with them. Once you live with them, you really get an inkling of who they really are. So, what else?
That's all I have. What do you got?
Yeah, I think we basically covered it. This was an episode that I don't know that the story, the episode 3 made me feel, you know, it kind of tugged on my heartstrings a little bit. This one felt real and raw, and I appreciate that. But as far as the fact that there wasn't a resolution, and I know that's the point we just talked about, you know, that's real, it leaves you feeling like, you know, it makes you feel uneasy. And it's one of those things, separating entertainment from real life. If you use TV as a method of, you know, escape, do you really want to see what it's like, or see a mirror image of what your life is already like? If you're having trouble at home, or usually you would watch TV to escape. So, and it's nice, and I think people appreciate those wrapped up, easy endings. But I don't know. I guess it's a preference thing.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, even though there's no direct resolution, you can see life is back to normal by the end of the episode. Like, they're joking around with each other again. And
it's true that it's probably back to normal, but you know, clearly there was a problem. The normal situation isn't functional. So we're back to that non-functioning normal.
Yeah.
But I guess, like anything, I've always, as a kid, I was like, well, why can't they just, you know, say this and it would figure it out completely? Well, then the episode would be over and we'd have no reason to have any of the rest of the episodes or seasons. So sometimes. Well, I think that does it for the 4th episode of Roseanne, you know, that podcast that you just listened to.
Yep.
Stay tuned for next week when Jay comes to the studio naked.
Why would we need that on an audio show? Like, what would it matter?
Well, we're going to do the
naked.
podcast at your place.
I could be naked right now.
You could be, but you're not. But you know how you said that you don't like people coming over unannounced? I'm coming over unannounced, and we're going to do the next podcast there.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Why not?
I don't think I'll answer the door.
You won't know until you answer the door who it is.
I can look at the people.
You have a peephole? Maybe I'll put my thumb over it.
Then I'll just know it's you.
Well, no, you don't know that it's me. Maybe it's...
I also have like a little chain, so I can just open up the door and be like, oh, it's you.
No, this is Sam Jensen from the Publishers Clearinghouse, and I have some clearinghouse to do. I have to give you money.
Am I being evicted?
Yes. We need to evict you. This is now a studio. We're going to do our 5th podcast. So...
Hell no, I won't go.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening to this episode, and you know, give us a like on Facebook, follow us on SoundCloud, and share it with your friends.
Should be a good time.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Have a good day.
Peace.